Let me ask you something straight out, the way I'd ask you if you were standing out here at my fence with a cup of coffee in your hand. You got a little piece of ground. Maybe it's a quarter acre in town. Maybe it's a big backyard with a fence around it. Maybe it's a half acre out on the edge of the county where the streetlights quit. And you've been laying awake at night thinking, I'd like to raise something. I'd like to feed my family off my own dirt. But every time you go looking for advice, some fella on the internet with 40 acres and a tractor the size of a church starts telling you about cattle rotations and hay fields. And you look out your kitchen window at that little patch of grass and you feel plumb foolish for even asking. Well, don't. You ain't foolish. You're just asking the wrong crowd. 'Cause here's the truth that nobody with 40 acres is going to tell you. Some of the best, most productive, most honest little livestock God ever made don't need but a corner of a backyard to make you real food. Real eggs, real meat, real manure for your garden. And they'll do it quiet, cheap, and without your neighbor ever knowing the difference. So today I'm going to walk you through the best farm animals for a beginner working with limited space. Not the fantasy list, the honest list. I'm going to give you real square footage numbers, real feed cost, real returns. And I'm going to tell you flat out which critters to start with, which ones to hold off on, and which ones will get you in trouble with the city, with the neighbors, and with your own wife. I've raised near all of them over 40-some years, and I've made every mistake there is to make, usually twice, so you don't have to make them even once. Grab your coffee. Pull up a bucket. This one's going to save you money, time, and a whole lot of regret. Now, before we talk about a single animal, we got to lay the foundation. And the foundation is space, real space. Honest space. 'Cause the number one reason beginners fail with livestock ain't sickness, and it ain't predators, and it ain't feed prices. It's crowding. Every single time. You crowd animals and everything goes wrong at once. They get to pecking and fighting. The ground turns to mud and manure soup. Parasites take hold. Flies come. Smell comes. And then the neighbor comes, and then the city comes. All of that starts with one thing: too many animals on too little ground. So let's do the honest math on your place before you buy a thing. Walk out back with a tape measure, or just step it off. A grown man's step is about 3 foot. Step off your usable ground. Now, and this is the part folks skip, subtract out what you can't actually use. Subtract the septic field. Subtract the shade under the big tree where you like to sit. Subtract your wife's flower beds, and don't you dare try to sneak a chicken run through her hostas. Subtract the driveway, the shed, the kids' swing set. What you got left? That's your real number. Most folks in town, when they do that honest, they come up with something like 200 to 600 square foot of usable animal ground. That's a strip along a fence and a corner by the shed. And I'm here to tell you, that is plenty. That is genuinely plenty to feed a family a whole lot of good food. You just gotta pick the right critters and stack 'em smart. And here's the second half of the foundation. The part that decides everything. When you got limited space, you don't pick your animal by which one you like the looks of. You pick it by pounds of food produced per square foot of ground. That's the whole game. On 40 acres, you can afford to be sentimental. On 400 square foot, every animal's got to earn its spot, or it's taking food out of your family's mouth. All right, let's get into it. Number 1 on my list, and I know this will surprise some of you, ain't chickens. It's quail. Coturnix quail specific. And if you've never given quail a second thought, I want you to sit up straight for this next part. 'Cause pound for pound and foot for foot, there ain't a better small space animal on God's green earth for a beginner. Here's why. A Coturnix quail is a little bitty bird, about the size of your fist. She needs about 1 square foot of space. 1. Not 10. 1. So a cage or a hutch that takes up about 8 square foot of your ground, that's a little box you could set on a table, will comfortably hold 8, maybe 10 birds. And them 8 to 10 hens will lay you 5 to 6 eggs a week apiece, just like a good chicken, only they start laying at 6 to 8 weeks old. 6 to 8 weeks. A chicken pullet's going to make you wait 5-6 months and eat feed the whole time. A quail's paying you back before she's 2 months old. Now folks say, well, them eggs is tiny. They are. Takes about 3 to 4 quail eggs to equal 1 chicken egg. But run the numbers instead of eyeballing it. 10 quail hens laying 5 a week is 50 eggs a week, which is 12.5 chicken eggs worth, off 8 square foot of ground. You'd need 6 or 7 chickens, and a whole lot more coop to match it. And that quail hutch fits under a carport, in a garage corner, on a covered porch, or against the back of the shed. And here's the part that really sells it for folks in town. Quail hens don't crow. They make a soft little chirp, quieter than a songbird outside your window. The roosters make a small crow, but it's a fraction of a rooster's holler. And you don't need roosters at all unless you want to hatch your own. Which means in a whole lot of towns where chickens are flat out banned, quail ain't even mentioned in the ordinance, 'cause the folks who wrote it never thought of them. They're also meat. A Coturnix is butcher ready at 7-8 weeks. Now it's a small bird, about like a dove, and it takes 2 of them to make a good plate for a grown man. But you can raise a batch of 30 in a space smaller than a bathtub and have them in the freezer in 2 months. There ain't another livestock animal that turns feed into meat that fast in that little room. Downsides, and I'll always give you the downsides. Quail are dumb as a sack of hammers, bless 'em. They spook straight up and can knock their own heads on the cage top, so you keep the ceiling low or soft. They don't go broody hardly ever, so if you want more, you'll need a little incubator, and them run $50-$60, and they ain't hard to use. And you don't cuddle a quail. They ain't pets. But if what you want is the most food off the least ground with the least noise, quail wins, and it ain't real close. Number 2 on my list is the rabbit. Rabbits are the quiet workhorse of small space homesteading, have been for 100 years. There's a reason folks called them victory rabbits back in the war years, when everybody in town was raising their own protein in the backyard. A breeding trio, that's 1 buck and 2 does, will fit in 3 hutches you can stack or hang along a fence line, taking up maybe 12 to 16 square foot total. And a medium breed doe, your New Zealand or your Californian, will give you 6 to 8 kits a litter and can do 4 or 5 litters a year without being pushed hard. Do that honest math. 2 does, 5 litters, 7 kits each. That's about 70 rabbits a year. Butchered at 10 to 12 weeks, that's roughly 140 to 180 pounds of clean, lean meat off less ground than a parking space. There ain't a chicken alive that'll do that. There ain't a pig alive that'll do that in that space. And rabbit meat is fine eating. Mild, white, lean, cooks up like chicken. My mama fried rabbit on Sundays, and half the table thought it was chicken till somebody told them. They're silent, too. A rabbit don't make a sound. Your neighbor could live 30 foot off your hutch for 5 years and never know they was there. Their manure is the finest thing you can put on a garden. It's what they call a cold manure. Means you can put it straight on your tomatoes fresh out from under the hutch without burning them. No composting required. I've grown the best beans of my life on ground under an old rabbit hutch. The honest downsides. Heat kills rabbits. Down here in the South, that's the whole ball game. A rabbit handles 10 degrees a lot better than it handles 95. So you must have shade, air movement, and in the worst of August, you'll be freezing water bottles and setting them in the hutch for them to lay against. Second thing, and I won't dance around it, you have to be willing to butcher. A rabbit is cute, and if you name 'em, you'll never eat 'em. That's a real thing, and it ends more rabbit projects than sickness does. Decide that before you buy, not after. All right, number 3, and now we get to the one you came here expecting. Chickens. And chickens absolutely belong on this list. I just don't put them first for tight spaces, and here's why. A standard laying hen needs about 3 to 4 square foot inside the coop and 8 to 10 square foot in the run, minimum, to stay healthy and not turn mean. Call it 12 square foot a bird all in. So a modest little flock of 5 hens is taking up 60 square foot of your ground. That's real estate. Compare that to 5 quail hens on 5 square foot, laying near the same number of eggs by weight, and you see the trade. But chickens got something quail and rabbits don't. They are the finest, scrap-eating, bug-eating, ground-working animal a small place can have. You throw a hen your kitchen scraps, your garden trimmings, your bug-chewed squash, and she turns it into eggs. She'll scratch through your compost pile and turn it for you. She'll clean a garden bed of grubs and cutworms come fall. She's a whole little farm system in one bird, and she gives you a big, satisfying egg for breakfast. For limited space, my strong advice is go small and go bantam-minded. A full-size Rhode Island Red is a fine bird on open ground, but on a tight lot, I'd look hard at the smaller laying breeds and the bantams. A bantam needs about half the space and eats about half to 2/3 the feed, and while her egg is smaller, usually about 2/3 the size, she's still laying regular. Or split the difference with a smaller framed standard layer like a leghorn type, which eats light and lays heavy. And hear me on this, 3 to 5 hens is a real flock. Folks act like you gotta have 20. 4 good hens will hand a family of 4 about 16 to 20 eggs a week in the good months, and that is genuinely enough for most kitchens. Don't let chicken math run away with you at the feed store. Them little peepers are cute in March, and they're a feed bill in October. The 2 rules for chickens in tight quarters. Rule 1, no roosters. None. You do not need a rooster for eggs, not a one, and a rooster is the single fastest way to turn a friendly neighbor into a complaining neighbor. Rule 2, manage the ground or the ground will manage you. 5 hens on a small run will have that dirt bare and stinking in a month. You either move them with a little tractor coupe or you run what they call a deep litter. Pile 6-8 inches of wood chips or leaves in that run and keep adding. The birds turn it, it composts down, it don't smell, and come spring you shovel out the best garden soil you ever saw. That one trick right there is the difference between a nice backyard flock and a mud pit your wife hates. Number 4, ducks. And I'll be honest with you, ducks are a little further down my list for tight spaces, but for the right person on the right ground, they beat chickens outright. A good laying duck, your khaki Campbell or your Welsh Harlequin, will outlay near any chicken you can name. 250, 300 eggs a year, and them big, rich eggs are something special in a cake. Bakers will pay extra for 'em, and they ain't wrong. Ducks are hardier than chickens, tougher against cold and wet, less prone to a lot of the common sickness, and they are absolute assassins on slugs and snails in a garden. If you got a slug problem, 3 ducks will fix it in a week. They need about 4 square foot in the house and 10, 15 in the run, so a touch more than a chicken. And here's the catch, the big one. Water. A duck don't need a pond, whatever you've heard, but she must have water deep enough to dunk her whole head and clean her eyes and nostrils. A rubber tub or an old mortar pan does fine, but a duck will foul that water in about an hour, and she will turn the ground around it into a mud hole faster than you can believe. So on a small lot, ducks mean you're dumping and refilling water every day, and you're setting that tub on gravel or over a drain so your ground don't turn to soup. Also, they're loud. A drake is quiet, but a duck hen quacks, and she quacks proud. Louder than folks expect. So on a tight town lot with close neighbors, weigh that honest. But if you got a spot for a gravel pad and a hose, and a garden that slugs are eating up, ducks earn their keep. Number 5, and this is where I start putting up some caution tape. Dwarf dairy goats. Your Nigerian dwarf, mostly. Now, a Nigerian dwarf is about the size of a big dog, 75 pounds or so, and a good doe in milk will give you somewhere around 1 quart to 2 quarts of milk a day. And it's rich, sweet milk, higher in butterfat than a cow's. Fresh milk from your own backyard. Cheese, butter, soap, buttermilk for your cornbread. There ain't a thing on this list that feels more like real farming than carrying a pail of milk to your own kitchen door. But I want you to go in with clear eyes, 'cause goats are where beginners with limited space get themselves in the deepest. First off, you cannot have one goat. Ever. A goat alone is a miserable, hollering, fence-jumping animal. They're herd creatures, and a lone goat will scream all day and try every board in your fence till she finds the loose one. So it's 2 goats, minimum, always. That's 2 animals eating, 2 making manure, 2 needing hooves trimmed. Second, space. 2 dwarf does want about 200, 250 square foot of run minimum, plus a dry shelter. And that ground will be bare dirt in short order, so you're feeding hay year-round regardless. Third, and this is the one that gets folks, to get milk, she has to have kids. Every year. Which means you've got to get her bred, which means finding a buck, and you do not want a buck on a small lot. A buck in rut smells like something died in a gas station, and he'll perfume your whole yard. Then you've got kids to sell or raise or butcher. Then you're milking twice a day, every day, 7 days a week, and there ain't no vacation and no calling in sick. And fourth, fencing. A goat is a 4-legged escape artist with a PhD. Whatever fence you think will hold her, add a foot and tighten it. If it'll hold water, it might hold a goat. So my honest word on goats, they are wonderful, and they are not a beginner's first animal on a small lot. Put them on your year 3 list. Get a season of chickens or rabbits under your belt first. Learn the daily rhythm of something dependent on you. Then step up to milk. Now let me give you 2 honorable mentions that folks never think of. First, pigeons. Squab. Old food, and back in the day near every home place had a pigeon loft up on the barn. Pigeons take almost no ground because they use the air. A loft on a wall or up on posts takes up practically nothing of your yard. A breeding pair raises 2 squab about every month, and squab is a rich, dark, fine meat that fancy restaurants charge a fortune for. They're quiet, they're cheap to feed, and they'll fly out and forage a good part of their own keep. Not for everybody, but if you're truly pressed for ground, look into it. Second, honeybees. Now, a bee ain't livestock exactly, but I'll put a hive on any small space list there is. A beehive takes up about 4 square foot of ground and gives you 20, 40 pounds of honey in a decent year, plus wax, plus every fruit tree and squash vine in a 2-mile radius gets pollinated and yields better. 4 square foot. You can't beat that ratio with anything that walks. Check your local rules and take a beginner's class first, but bees belong in this conversation. All right, now let me tell you what not to start with, 'cause knowing what to skip will save you more grief than knowing what to buy. Don't start with a pig. I know. A pig turns scraps into bacon, and folks love that idea. But a feeder hog puts on 250 pounds in 6 months, and by the end he's strong enough to move a fence panel with his shoulder, and he'll root your whole yard to china clay in a week. On a small lot, he's a mud factory and a smell your neighbors will absolutely notice. And you got to process 250 pounds of meat all at once, which means freezer space and either skill or a processor's bill. Pigs are for folks with room to rotate 'em. Don't start with a cow, and don't let nobody sell you on a miniature cow for a backyard either. Even a small cow wants an acre or better, eats hay by the round bale, and gives more milk than a family can drink. It's a beautiful dream, and it's the wrong first step. Don't start with turkeys or geese on a small place. Turkeys are big, they need room, and the broad-breasted ones are fragile in a way that'll break your heart. Geese are wonderful guardians and grass eaters, but a goose is loud enough to wake a whole street and mean enough to run off the mailman, and you'll hear about it. And don't start with sheep unless you got actual pasture. A sheep needs grass. And if she ain't got grass, you're just buying hay to grow wool you don't have a use for. Now let me hit you with the mistakes I see beginners make over and over, 'cause the animal you pick matters a whole lot less than how you go about it. Mistake 1, and it's the biggest by a mile, starting with too many. Everybody does it. You get excited, you go to the feed store or the swap meet, and you come home with more than you planned. Every single time. I'd tell you to start with about half of what you think you want, and I mean that. 4 hens, not 12. 1 breeding trio of rabbits, not 3. 8 quail, not 30. You can always add come spring. Animals are easy to add and mighty hard to unwind. Give yourself 1 full year, all 4 seasons, at small numbers. Learn the summer heat and the winter chores and the mud in February before you scale up. Mistake 2, building the housing after you buy the animals. Don't you dare. I've watched a man keep 6 chicks in a cardboard box in his laundry room for 3 weeks 'cause the coop was almost done. It never is. You build the house, you set the fence, you fill the feeder, and then and only then do you go get the animals. Everything's calm that way. Do it backwards and the whole first month is a scramble. Mistake 3, forgetting the water. Every animal on this list will die of thirst faster than anything else can kill it. In a southern August, a rabbit or a bird can go down in an afternoon on an empty waterer. So before you pick your animal, figure your water. Where's the spigot? How far you carrying buckets? What happens when it freezes in January? 'Cause it does, even down here. And a frozen waterer at daylight is a real chore in the dark. Solve water first, and half of livestock keeping gets easy. Mistake 4. Not checking the rules. Every town's different, and the rules can be plumb silly. Some places allow 6 hens and no rooster. Some allow poultry, but never define it, which is how quail slip through. Some got setback rules. Your coop's got to be so many foot off the property line. Some got homeowner association covenants that trump the city outright. Spend one afternoon on this before you spend $1. Call the city clerk and just ask plain. It ain't fun, and it's a whole lot more fun than tearing down a coop you just built. Mistake 5, and this is the sneaky one. Ignoring the neighbors. On a small lot, your neighbor's goodwill is a piece of infrastructure just as real as your fence. So go talk to them before, not after. Tell them what you're planning. Tell them there won't be a rooster. Tell them you'll keep it clean. And then, and this is the trick my daddy taught me, you hand them a dozen eggs. Regular. A neighbor getting free eggs don't call the city. A neighbor getting free eggs tells the other neighbors how nice it is. That dozen eggs a month is the cheapest insurance you will ever buy. And mistake 6, forgetting the manure. Every animal you bring on eats one end and fills a bucket at the other. And on a small lot, that pile builds up quick. But here's the beautiful part. That ain't waste. That's the whole point. Rabbit pellets go straight on the garden. Chicken and duck bedding composts down into black gold in about 6 months. Quail litter's strong stuff. Compost it first. Set up your compost bins the same day you set up your coop, and your manure problem turns into your best garden ever. Ignore it, and you got flies, smell, and a mad neighbor by July. So let me put a bow on it and tell you exactly what I'd do if I was you, starting out this spring on a small piece of ground. Year 1, I'd start with 4 laying hens and 1 breeding trio of rabbits. Them 2 together take up about 80 square foot, and they don't overlap a bit in what they give you. The hens hand you eggs every morning and eat your kitchen scraps, and the rabbits fill your freezer and fertilize your garden. Both of them are cheap to get into, forgiving of a beginner's mistakes, and quiet enough not to stir up trouble. I'd spend that whole first year just learning the rhythm. Morning chores, evening chores, summer heat, winter water, the whole cycle. Year 2, if I liked it, and I bet you will, I'd add 8 to 10 quail in a hutch on the porch or in the shed for a second egg source and some fast meat. And I'd put in a beehive if the rules allowed. Still ain't used but 100 square foot of ground, and now I'm getting eggs, meat, honey, and fertilizer off a backyard. Year 3, that's when I'd look at ducks if I had the water sorted, or a pair of Nigerian dwarf does if I had the fence and the 2-a-day milking discipline in me. By then, you'll know your own self well enough to answer that honest. And through all of it, I'd hold to one rule. Every animal on my place has got to earn its square footage. When you got limited space, sentiment is a luxury. That don't mean be cruel. I take better care of my stock than I do myself most days. It just means be honest. If a critter's taking up ground and not paying rent in eggs, meat, milk, or manure, it's costing your family something. You do not need 40 acres. You do not need a tractor. You do not need to wait till you buy that dream place out in the country that keeps getting further away every year. You need a corner of a yard, a good fence, clean water, and the willingness to walk out there every single morning, rain or shine, sick or tired, and take care of something that's dependent on you. That right there is the whole secret. It ain't the acreage, it's the showing up. So there you have it, the best farm animals for a beginner working with limited space, the honest square footage, the real returns, what to skip, and the mistakes that trip up near everybody. Start small, build the house first, solve your water, feed your neighbors a dozen eggs now and then, and let that little patch of ground surprise you. If this helped you get a plan together, do me a favor and hit that like button. It truly helps this old fella's channel reach other folks trying to do the same thing. And if you ain't subscribed, come on and join us. I put out honest, down-to-earth homestead advice every single week, straight from the farm, no fantasy and no fluff. And you tell me down in the comments how much space you working with and what critter you're leaning toward. I read every one of them, and I'll help you think it through if you're stuck. Now get on out there and get something started. That ground ain't gonna farm itself.
That's all for today, folks. If this helped you for your farm, hit the like button, subscribe for more honest farm advice, and I'll see you next time, right here from the farm.